The riding school woke up every morning like a small world of its own, tucked between rolling hills and the soft scent of eucalyptus drifting through the early breeze. Horses shuffled in their stalls, snorting gently as sunlight spilled across the courtyard. The arena sand, still marked by yesterday's hoofprints, waited for another day of stories to unfold. And in this quiet but vibrant routine, every detail seemed to hum with purpose. Anyone stepping into that place could feel the strange mix of peace and anticipation in the air. It was the kind of setting that made people believe change could happen right there, in the rhythm of hoofbeats. Among the familiar sounds of leather buckles and distant whinnies stood Will, the school's seasoned riding instructor. He carried the confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime in the saddle, and it showed not only in his posture, but in the way people naturally gravitated toward him. Charismatic, attentive, and always ready with a disarming smile, Will chose his students with a keen instinct that often felt personal, and sometimes, for reasons he didn't voice out loud, he treated a few with a different kind of focus. That unspoken selectiveness shaped the dynamics of the entire place in ways only the sharpest eyes could catch. Then there was Suzy, the kind of student who arrived early, stayed late, and absorbed every detail like someone who believed riding was more than a sport. She dreamed of improving, not to impress anyone, but because it awakened something brave inside her. Her dedication stood out, almost glowed, drawing quiet admiration from those who watched her try, fail, try again, and smile at her own progress. But as Will's interest in her shifted from professional to personal, the air around her lessons began to change. And this subtle shift, barely noticeable at first, would soon echo through everything that came next, leading the story toward its next unfolding turn. As the days moved forward, Suzy's presence in the riding school became almost a quiet anchor. She had this way of brushing a horse's neck that made even the most restless animal settle, as if they sensed her genuine warmth. People often underestimate how deeply horses mirror human emotions, but Suzy already understood that. Maybe it came from her past, years marked by moments when she had to find calm inside herself before the world around her followed. Whatever it was, her connection to the stables felt natural, like she belonged there long before she ever arrived. And that authenticity didn't go unnoticed. Will watched her more closely than he admitted to anyone, maybe even to himself. At first it was simple admiration, her discipline, her eagerness to learn. But admiration can blur lines when not held in check. He felt drawn to her in a way that surprised him, stirring memories of his younger years when everything felt possible. It wasn't just about teaching anymore. It felt personal, and personal in a place built on structure and trust could become complicated fast, especially when the emotions weren't shared on both sides. Still, Suzy remained unaware of the quiet shift happening behind Will's glances and casual conversations. For her, he was simply the instructor she trusted to guide her through the challenges she faced on the horse's back. She carried hopes, not for romance, but for progress, dreaming of the day she would master her posture, steady her hands, and feel the horse respond with true partnership. Yet, beneath those everyday lessons, something subtle was changing, a tension beginning to build, soft as a breeze now, but strong enough to hint that the riding school's harmony was about to tilt, inviting the next part of the story to step forward. Morning after morning, Suzy would swing her leg over the saddle with that mix of nerves and excitement only true learners carry. Each ride felt like a small journey, filled with tiny victories she celebrated quietly, and mistakes she tucked away as lessons. The horse beneath her, warm, steady, breathing like a living drum, became both her challenge and her comfort. And in those moments, she felt a spark of who she wanted to become. Not perfect, not fearless, but growing. She just didn't imagine her path would be shaped by more than the riding itself. Will, meanwhile, found himself drifting toward her path whenever he could, offering comments that carried more charm than instruction. His voice softened around her. His gestures lingered just a little too long. It was subtle enough that some would miss it, but others sensed that something in him was shifting. The riding school was a place where emotions often rose to the surface: fear, pride, frustration, but this was different. It was personal interest masquerading as mentorship, and even he struggled to separate one from the other. And slowly, this mix began to color the way he interacted with her. Yet Suzy, with her hopeful ambition and honest focus, didn't read between those lines. Her heart was tuned to improvement, not to interpretations. She trusted the routine, the atmosphere, the idea that every student was guided fairly. Her dreams stretched toward mastering the art she loved, not navigating someone else's expectations. But as the days stitched themselves together, small imbalances started to form beneath the surface. And while Suzy didn't feel them clearly yet, the story was already shifting its weight, quietly pointing toward the next chapter, where the first signs of discomfort would begin to take shape. It didn't happen all at once. At first, Will's attempts to get closer to Suzy felt like harmless gestures. A friendly comment here, a compliment there, always wrapped in the smooth tone he was known for. But slowly, those moments began to stretch, lingering in ways that made the air feel heavier than before. He'd find excuses to walk beside her after lessons, to ask questions that slipped beyond riding techniques, to offer a warmth that didn't quite fit the student-instructor boundary. And although his charm worked easily on many, Suzy received these signals with polite distance. She didn't want to hurt him, but she also didn't want to encourage something she didn't feel. Suzy had always believed in kindness, and sometimes that made things harder. She tried to respond with grace, giving short smiles and soft replies that said, "Thank you," without saying, "Yes," but her gentle refusal didn't stop Will from trying to close that gap. The more she avoided personal conversations, the more he seemed to lean into them, as if convinced she just needed time to see him differently. Inside, Suzy felt a quiet discomfort growing, like a thread being pulled too tight. She didn't want conflict. She just wanted to learn, plain and simple. And then, little by little, Will's charm began to fade. His expression around her shifted, tightening at the edges whenever she didn't react the way he hoped. The compliments stopped. The easy smiles vanished, and in their place came something colder, something distant. He still taught the group with his usual enthusiasm, but when it came to Suzy, a new pattern began to form. One she couldn't fully understand yet, but one that already carried consequences that would echo through her lessons and into the next turn of her journey. Suzy began to notice the change during a Wednesday lesson, one of those crisp mornings when the arena smelled of fresh hay and damp sand. Will barely glanced at her when she mounted her horse, offering only a quick nod before turning his attention elsewhere. His voice, usually steady and warm, skipped over her name as if it weighed too much to say. She felt the difference immediately, like stepping into a room where the temperature had suddenly dropped. For a moment, she wondered if she'd done something wrong, but deep down, she knew it wasn't about her mistakes. As the class unfolded, Will spent long stretches guiding other students with enthusiasm, walking beside them, adjusting their reins, celebrating even their smallest improvements. When he finally reached Suzy, his instructions were short and hollow. Post higher. Keep your hands still. Focus. No explanation. No guidance. No warmth. Just clipped words tossed over his shoulder as he moved on. Each moment left her sinking a little deeper into confusion. The closeness he once pushed for was now replaced by a distance sharp enough to sting. By the end of the lesson, Suzy rode toward the stable feeling something heavy in her chest, a blend of frustration and sadness she couldn't quite name. She had come ready to learn, ready to grow, but instead she felt invisible. And invisibility can hurt more than confrontation, especially when someone you trusted suddenly pulls away. As she brushed down her horse, the rhythmic motion steadied her breath, but the questions kept circling. Why the sudden change? What had shifted between them? She didn't realize it yet, but this was only the beginning of a larger imbalance that would soon shape the days ahead. In the days that followed, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Suzy's lessons grew shorter. Her questions met with quick, distracted answers. The personalized guidance she had relied on before vanished, replaced by a detached professionalism that left her adrift. She felt the shift like a subtle current beneath the surface, carrying her away from the confidence she had built over months. Other students flourished under Will's attention, their progress visible and celebrated, while she struggled to make even small gains. Every correction felt rushed, every tip delivered without explanation. Despite the growing frustration, Suzy refused to let discouragement take root. She began observing other riders closely, noting the techniques Will emphasized for them, mentally piecing together lessons she no longer received directly. Each ride became a private study, a quiet determination to bridge the gap on her own. Her hands, once shaky, grew steadier. Her posture, once uncertain, began to improve, and though the silence from Will weighed on her, she discovered an unexpected strength in her independence, a quiet resolve that surprised even herself. Yet the tension lingered, hanging over her rides like a shadow she couldn't shake. The lesson that had once been a sanctuary now carried a subtle edge, reminding her that trust and guidance weren't guaranteed. They had to be earned every day. Suzy's mind churned with questions, but also with plans. If Will wouldn't teach her, she would find another way. She just didn't know yet that this choice would set the stage for her growth, leading her to unexpected discoveries about herself and her horse. And with that, the story edged toward the next chapter, where determination would begin to take center stage. Suzy's confidence wavered as she struggled to keep pace with the other students. Every jump, every turn felt like a small mountain she had to climb alone. She could see the difference clearly. Her peers were advancing, their horses responding with ease, while she often ended lessons feeling stuck, frustrated, and unsure. The lack of proper guidance gnawed at her determination, whispering doubts she hadn't entertained before. But deep inside, something refused to break. She reminded herself that progress was never linear, that resilience came from persistence, not perfection. Each setback was a challenge, not a verdict. To compensate, Suzy began spending extra hours observing others, noting the way their instructors corrected posture, timing, and balance. She watched, memorized, and experimented, translating observation into practice on her own. The arena became her classroom, and her horse, her partner in learning. Sometimes she fell, sometimes she misjudged a trot or a canter, but each attempt carried the seed of understanding, slowly knitting confidence into her muscles, patience into her mind. And in those moments of quiet struggle, she discovered an unexpected joy, learning that wasn't dependent on anyone else. Even as frustration simmered, Suzy's determination cast a subtle light across her efforts. She began to notice small victories, a steadier hand here, a smoother transition there, that reassured her she wasn't failing. And yet, the awareness that Will's attention and support had dwindled lingered like a shadow at the edge of every ride. She wasn't angry, not exactly. It was more like a gentle recognition that the path she had chosen now relied entirely on her own dedication. That realization, as intimidating as it was, hinted at something bigger, something that would soon reshape the way she saw herself, her horse, and the challenges ahead. With each passing day, Suzy became increasingly aware of the gap between herself and the other students. She watched their smooth rides, the easy rhythm of their movements, and couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. But rather than letting it defeat her, she transformed it into motivation. Every observation was a lesson in itself, every misstep an opportunity to adapt. She mapped out the techniques she saw, replaying them in her mind before testing them on her horse. Slowly, methodically, she turned frustration into a silent drive that no one could see but her. Her horse became more than just an animal. It became a mirror of her efforts, reflecting patience, persistence, and subtlety back at her. Through countless solo sessions, Suzy discovered how to communicate with it through timing, pressure, and gentle guidance. The bond that formed was unspoken, yet profound, a partnership built on trust and understanding rather than verbal commands. In these quiet moments, the arena felt less like a place of comparison and more like a sanctuary where progress was measured in tiny, meaningful victories. Each success, however small, added a layer of confidence she hadn't realized she was capable of. Meanwhile, the distance from Will continued to loom in the background. He no longer offered advice, corrections, or encouragement, leaving Suzy to navigate the challenges alone. Yet, in his absence, she began to notice her own capacity for problem-solving and resilience. Without relying on his guidance, she was forced to trust herself, to take risks, and to find creative solutions when something didn't work. And though the journey was exhausting at times, it revealed a truth she had not yet fully embraced. The strength to succeed often comes from within. That realization quietly set the stage for her next leap forward. As weeks went by, Suzy's dedication began to yield noticeable results. Though she kept her progress quietly to herself, her posture steadied, her hands grew more confident, and her timing with the horse improved in ways that surprised even her. The arena, once a place of quiet frustration, started to feel familiar, almost comforting, as if each ride whispered encouragement back at her. Still, the absence of Will's mentorship left a lingering ache, proof that she had been missing guidance, yet proof of her own resilience too. Every step forward carried both pride and a quiet defiance. Her solitude in learning sparked creativity. When a jump felt awkward, she experimented with rhythm and pressure, observing subtle reactions in her horse that revealed solutions beyond any instruction she'd received. Other riders began to notice her determination, though many didn't yet understand the depth of her effort. She was no longer just following the rules. She was discovering her own language of riding, a partnership with the horse built on intuition, patience, and respect. Each breakthrough, however small, reminded her that growth was possible even without approval or recognition. Still, the frustration of being overlooked lingered in her mind, a soft hum beneath the thrill of progress. She had come to love riding not because of accolades or attention, but for the connection and freedom it offered. And now, with each self-taught lesson, she began to realize that she could chart her own path, one step at a time. The challenges of neglect had pushed her into an unexpected transformation, one that was shaping her courage, independence, and confidence. And with that, the story was ready to shift into the next chapter, where determination would blossom into undeniable skill. Suzy decided it was time to fully commit to her own training, no matter what anyone thought or said. She arrived earlier, stayed later, and approached each ride with a quiet intensity that made the arena hum with energy. Every movement, every adjustment was deliberate. Every mistake became an opportunity for insight. She studied her horse's reactions, fine-tuning her timing, balance, and posture with careful attention. What had once been a source of frustration slowly transformed into a playground of discovery, and in that focus, she found a rhythm that no instructor could force, only she could create. The bond between Suzy and her horse deepened with every session. She learned to read subtle signals, a flick of the ear, a shift in weight, a soft sigh of anticipation. Patience became her strongest tool, consistency her greatest ally. Each ride strengthened trust, and with trust came fluidity, confidence, and an almost wordless understanding. In the quiet moments between trots and canters, she began to feel the horse's personality shine, responding to her touch and guidance as if it were a conversation. It was a partnership that no lesson plan could teach, one born from dedication and respect. Other riders began noticing the transformation, whispers of curiosity and admiration spreading quietly through the stables. Suzy's movements were smoother, her decisions more precise, her presence in the arena calm but assertive. There was something magnetic about the way she worked with her horse, an authenticity that drew attention without effort. And yet, she wasn't riding for recognition. She was riding to prove something to herself, to discover the depth of her own perseverance. That self-driven progress set the stage for even greater leaps, hinting that the next chapter would reveal her potential in ways Will could no longer control. Each ride became a lesson in resilience, a dance between Suzy and her horse where intuition led the way. She experimented with speed, with posture, with the subtle shifts that could make the difference between a clumsy turn and a perfect arc. With every trial, she learned patience, not just with the horse, but with herself. The small victories began to add up: steadier trots, smoother transitions, balanced canters. Her confidence grew quietly, radiating in the way she held herself in the saddle. It wasn't flashy, but it was real, and it was hers. In the quiet corners of the arena, she discovered joy in persistence. Each session taught her more about her horse's moods, her own reactions, and the delicate balance between control and trust. The connection between them was electric yet subtle, a silent conversation punctuated by soft cues and gentle guidance. Other riders noticed the difference too, exchanging glances that acknowledged her improvement. She wasn't just keeping up anymore, she was evolving, and with every heartbeat in rhythm with her horse, Suzy realized she could rely on herself, independent of anyone else's instruction. The growing bond and newfound mastery began to shape not just her skills, but her identity as a rider. No longer timid or uncertain, she rode with quiet authority, each movement deliberate, each decision confident. Will's absence had forced her into independence, and independence had sparked a strength she hadn't known existed. Every stride reinforced her resilience. Every canter emboldened her spirit. The transformation was unfolding steadily, preparing her for moments when skill and courage would collide in ways even she hadn't imagined. And that momentum was about to carry her into the next chapter, where her determination would be tested further. As Suzy continued her self-driven training, her progress became impossible to ignore. Every movement was sharper, more precise, a reflection of countless hours spent observing, experimenting, and adjusting. The quiet confidence she carried in the saddle now radiated outward, capturing the attention of instructors and peers alike. She had transformed the arena into her own proving ground, where determination outweighed guidance and persistence replaced favoritism. And with every stride, she felt the thrill of achieving something entirely on her own terms. Her horse responded with a grace that mirrored her growth. Where once hesitation and uncertainty had clouded their partnership, now there was a harmony that felt almost instinctive. Suzy could anticipate the horse's movements, responding before even a small shift occurred. And together they executed turns, trots, and canters with a fluidity that felt almost effortless. The bond between them was no longer just practical, it was emotional, a quiet acknowledgement of trust, patience, and mutual respect. This connection made her ride not just a lesson, but a dialogue of resilience and understanding. The other riders, too, began to feel the impact of Suzy's dedication. Murmurs of admiration, subtle nods of recognition, and the occasional astonished glance reminded her that her hard work had not gone unnoticed. She wasn't riding for attention, yet it arrived anyway, as if her commitment alone demanded acknowledgement. And with this growing recognition, Suzy realized something vital. She was no longer dependent on anyone to validate her skills. The stage was set for a pivotal moment, one that would challenge both her abilities and her newfound confidence, leading directly into the next chapter where her true potential would shine. The day of the group lesson arrived with a crisp clarity that made the arena sparkle under the morning sun. Suzy felt a flutter of nerves, but it was different now, less about fear, more about anticipation. She had worked tirelessly, learned from every observation, and built a connection with her horse that felt unshakable. Each movement felt intentional, each canter a testament to her self-discipline. She knew this was the moment where her months of dedication would finally speak louder than anyone's opinions. The air buzzed with energy, and she was ready to let it carry her forward. Will, watching from the sidelines, could hardly hide his surprise. He had expected routine performance, maybe a slight improvement, but not this level of precision and confidence. Suzy moved with an ease that seemed almost natural, her posture flawless, her timing impeccable. Every jump and turn was executed with grace, her horse responding to subtle cues like an extension of her own will. The realization hit him hard. All the skills, all the growth, had been her own doing, nurtured in the absence of his instruction. And suddenly, he understood that his neglect had not hindered her. It had forced her to discover her own strength. Other students and instructors watched quietly, noticing the transformation that had been months in the making. Whispers of admiration floated through the arena as Suzy completed each exercise with growing confidence. This wasn't just about riding. It was about proving that dedication, resilience, and self-belief could overcome favoritism and absence. And in the back of her mind, Suzy felt a quiet pride, knowing that her journey had forged independence, skill, and a partnership with her horse that no one could take away. The stage was set for the next moment, where recognition and personal triumph would collide. As the lesson continued, the contrast between Suzy and the other students became undeniable. While some struggled to perfect their form or timing, she moved with a quiet authority that drew eyes without effort. Every canter, every jump was executed with precision, her confidence radiating like sunlight across the arena. Even Will found himself involuntarily analyzing her technique, noting subtle improvements he hadn't expected. It was clear to everyone present, she had grown, not because of him, but in spite of his neglect. The realization sat heavy, a silent acknowledgement of her independence and hard work. Suzy, fully immersed in her ride, felt a surge of empowerment with each movement. She wasn't riding for validation, yet the recognition from her peers and instructors added a subtle warmth to her pride. Each stride reinforced her belief in herself and the bond with her horse, which had become an unspoken partnership built on trust and respect. She moved as if the arena itself had become an extension of her determination, each jump a statement that she could achieve mastery on her own terms. The joy of that accomplishment sparked a quiet but powerful exhilaration inside her. By the end of the session, the transformation was impossible to ignore. Will's expression, a mixture of surprise and reluctant acknowledgement, spoke volumes of what he had failed to see for months. Suzy had not only improved, she had surpassed expectations, redefining her capabilities in a way that commanded respect. Her journey of resilience, self-discipline, and quiet determination culminated in this moment, leaving her with a profound sense of achievement. And as she led her horse back to the stables, she felt a new clarity about her future, ready to embrace it with confidence. Whether it included a new instructor, competitions, or simply the joy of riding on her own terms. In the quiet that followed the lesson, Suzy felt a profound sense of accomplishment washing over her. She had faced neglect, doubt, and frustration, yet here she was, standing tall, confident, and fully in control of her progress. Her horse nuzzled her gently, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had built through patience, consistency, and mutual trust. Every struggle, every extra hour of observation and practice had led to this moment, and it felt sweeter for having been earned entirely on her own. This was more than skill. It was self-discovery. Will remained on the sidelines, a mixture of regret and admiration crossing his face. The lesson had confronted him with the consequences of his choices, showing clearly that Suzy's growth didn't depend on him, but on her own dedication. The realization was humbling, a reminder that guidance, while valuable, could never replace personal effort and resilience. Suzy, however, didn't dwell on his reaction. Her focus was forward, on the horizon of possibilities that now seemed limitless. She understood that her independence was her greatest strength, a lesson she would carry beyond the arena and into every challenge to come. As the stable settled into the calm of the afternoon, Suzy led her horse back with a quiet pride, feeling the culmination of months of persistence, courage, and unwavering determination. The respect she earned from her peers was real, but it was the self-respect, the knowledge of what she could achieve alone, that filled her with true satisfaction. With a heart full of confidence and a spirit ready for new challenges, she envisioned the next steps in her riding journey, knowing that no obstacle could hold her back. And with that, her story reached a point of powerful closure, leaving the path open for future victories and personal triumphs.